Hello, everybody. This is a special pre-recorded edition of Genesis Science Fiction Radio, a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website, and we're doing this to accommodate a great writer and director of a project that's going to be actually shown here in Chicago tomorrow night, Destination Planet Negro. This is the August 22nd, 2013 edition. And I have the great privilege to talk to Kevin Wilmott. How are you doing, Kevin?
Hey, very good week.
And where are you coming to from tonight?
I'm in Lawrence, Kansas.
Lawrence, Kansas. Oh, that's where they blew that up and showed the radiations. That was the day after, wasn't it, or something like that?
Correct. The day after was shot here. Yes, indeed, sir. Yeah, it was a big deal here.
I'll bet it was. Anyway, let's get a little bit about you first, and then we'll talk about your project. How's that go?
Sounds good.
All right. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Kansas. I grew up in a small town, Junction City, Kansas, which is Kansas, and an army town, and I think probably. Junction City, grew up in the 60s and 70s, and, very, very different town, a small Kansas town, very, an army town, so the Buffalo soldiers were stationed at Raleigh.
Okay.
And so the neighborhood I grew up in, a lot of Buffalo soldiers lived there.
And you went to school with kids, or was it kind of like a mixed environment where you went to school, or were you kind of like based, or how did that work out?
Well, my parents were some of the few folks in town that were military, and so the neighborhood was very much mixed with, guys who had married women overseas, war brides, and so it was a really, it was diversity before they turned it diversity, and very, give an example, like the block I grew up on across the street was a Japanese and a black couple. Next to us was a white couple, and then there was a black couple, and then a black and German couple, black and Korean couple, an Italian couple, black and Germans, black and Filipinos. That was all one block in a small Kansas town.
Man, that's pretty unbelievable. I mean, you would never suspect that in a state like Kansas, especially how it's kind of turned out today. It seems a lot more different than that. But I think as you get down to smaller and smaller groups, I mean, state, then you have a city, then you actually have the people on your block, things can be a lot different than how you might stereotypically believe of state.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was it, because these, the soldiers there, and City was just really there to serve the soldiers. The soldiers, they just, they went all over the world, and, they married women from, various different countries and came back, had children, and it was a beautiful way to grow up in terms of race, I think, in many ways.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot like kind of like my experience. I'm biracial, and on my block, we had Asian, we had black, we had white, we had Jewish, we had English, we had Italian, it's kind of an unusual circumstance that you just don't find everywhere in America.
Very much so. I mean, for us, it's like, you being in Chicago, it was like being in a big city in a little small town. And most of these folks, weren't from Kansas originally. They were from, all over the country. A lot of, black folks, big cities, black men in particular, the Buffalo soldiers, and then they, married women and settled in Kansas. And so it was a great time to grow up.
Well, that sounds pretty cool. Now, and were you there for elementary school and high school?
Yeah, born and raised there, and didn't really leave until I went to grad school at NYU.
Mm-hmm. And what did you study?
Dramatic writing. I was at the School of the Arts there to study dramatic writing, and this was in the 80s, and it was a good time to be there as well. It was right after Spike Lee had success, and I think when I decided to go to grad school, it was, you know, when independent film was really, you know, kind of becoming a cool thing, and you know, I always kind of had the impression that the kind of movies I wanted to make, Hollywood wasn't going to be, you know, all over be begging me to do those films. So I knew kind of early on I would probably have to be an independent filmmaker, and so going to NYU was a great place to kind of you know, to hone those skills and kind of you know, create the approach that I kind of use now.
Sure. Well, let me ask you this: did you have the bug, the movie bug, before you went off to college?
Yeah, I had it early on. I you know, from when I was a kid, you know, very much like the Cosby Kids, you know, like the old Cosby Show, you know, punching guys, you know, like I said, all these various races, and we went to movies every weekend, you know, and we went to, you know, all kind of movies. The only movies we didn't go to were Disney movies, you know.
Sure.
We went and saw everything else. And, you know, back in those days, you know, people features, right?
Right.
So, you know, I spent a lot of time in movie theaters growing up. And of course, in the blaxploitation movies in the 70s, when I was a teenager, really, you know, had a big influence on me. You know, Gordon Parks is from Fort Scott, Kansas. And
right.
So seeing his success really kind of spoke to me in terms of, you know, being a filmmaker as well. But yeah, I had a Jones for the movie thing, you know, from almost the very get-go.
Do you remember the first movie you ever saw in a theater?
You know, I think the first movie, and this is, I remember my mother taking me to the movies, and I remember, I think it was It's Commandments. All I remember is these big, crazy-ass colors. And,
yeah.
That's all I really remember, you know, was these colors. I remember these colors were just like, oh. And I think we had to sit close up front because I think we got there later, so I kind of remember that part of it. But I must have been, you know, 5 or 6. I mean, but I still kind of remember that.
That is kind of cool. Plus, you know, with the 10 Commandments, there was all that action on the screen. You know, my first movie was a double feature, and I think it was probably a little bit later. I'll have to look it up on IMDb. It was a double feature with Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea and John Wayne in Hatari, where he was 10 rhinoceroses.
Oh, yeah, I know that.
And I don't know which was more fascinating, being in the theater or seeing those two things. But, you know, kind of in commemoration, I went and bought Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea on Laserdisc, which I know is really old school. All right, so I mean, you saw the movies, you got kind of the bug, and I think that knowing about Gordon Parks probably at least gave you the impetus to think, well, if he could do it, I could do it. Is that true?
Very, very much so. I mean, that's kind of exactly what happened. I think, you know, I saw him. There was a special on TV. They were showing CBS, and then after the film, they did a 10-minute little promo for a movie coming up, and it was for the Learning Tree, and they showed him shooting in Kansas, and it just kind of blew away. Mm-hmm. And I was fortunate enough to meet Mr. Parks, you know, a few times, and we honored him in Harlem with at that time Governor Sabias, who's now the Secretary of Human Resources, and helping Human Services, and you know, and we honored him there before he died, and it was you know, and I kind of know his family now a bit, and it's you know he's a true legend. Yeah.
All right. So, and then you went to NYU. How long was it? And it sounds to me like you went there mostly. You started out as a writer, right?
Correct. That was you know, it was a play I wrote that got me accepted into NYU, but I really wanted to go there to learn how to write screenplays. I felt like I knew how to write plays to some degree from Brad, and I had some success with that. But you know, there was nothing, you know, in Kansas that could teach me screenwriting.
Sure.
And that time, you know, there weren't, you know, video cameras with those big, huge monstrosity things with the big reel-to-reel things on them.
Oh, absolutely.
You know the deal. And so, you know, there was nothing around that could speak to that. So I really went to New York to try to learn how to write movies and movies.
And about how did that process go for you? Did you start out with some fundamental classes and work your way into it, or were you lucky enough to maybe help other people on their projects right away?
Well, kind of what I did was, it's kind of probably not the way you should do it in some ways, but, we all kind of stumble into these things. That's where I guess, for me, I'd had some success with my plays, and so I was pretty confident that I could tell a story. And then at NYU, the tough thing about NYU is that unless you're not in the writing department, and the writing department and the filmmaking department are kind of two separate things, and never the two shall meet. And so you had to kind of find a way to if you wanted to make a movie, you had to find a way to make it yourself, really. And so, I got together with friends, and it wasn't really until I came back to Kansas to make my first film, a movie called 9th Street, that I really got up close and personal with film equipment, and so it was kind of a film school when I made the film.
And so you accumulated some friends. You did a little bit. You got enough going on in New York to kind of appreciate the festival. But it sounds like you had to get home in order to do. Well, that was your first film of your.
That was my first film. Yeah, my first. I mean, I made some shorts and different things, but nothing to really write home about. But I think NYU for me was you got to see how the business worked. You got to see I got to see that I never thought that from my experience at school at that time, I just didn't think that my stories were going to be told. And so I thought I had to find a way to tell my stories myself. And so, just he depended upon his Brooklyn neighborhood. I went back home to Kansas to go back to the people who knew my stories and who appreciated, my abilities and so forth. And I think everybody goes back to their kind of support group that you kind of grow up with and over time, and you sort of your first film, you really depended upon those people.
Well, I have to admit that I've gone through the same process, and one of the things that is very important to me is working with people that I know and people that I trust and are accountable, because it is not an inconsiderable job to put together a movie. If you're talking about a full feature, you're talking about many days of shooting. You're talking about equipment. You're talking about people showing up on it. You're talking about costumes. I mean, it's a big project, and it's no wonder that people would gravitate to their home, to their home base or a place where it's most comfortable for them to do something that as daunting as that, because it is huge. And And I've said to people who are starting out, who go, I can't wait to get out of class or get out of school so I can go out to Hollywood, and I don't have the heart to tell them that for about, 90% of the people who go out there, that's where you go for your dreams to die. But, I'm just being honest. But the other part of it is how are you going to pay for your movie? Nobody in Hollywood knows you, and they're not going to give you a nickel. Well, who's going to support you? You have to go exactly what you said. You have to go where you have a possible support system. And so tell us a little bit about how that worked out for you, that first movie.
Well, it took me, in the end, it took me 9 years.
Okay.
And, which is, I know it sounds insane, but it was kind of typical in some ways. But I really learned all about movies making that film. And, we had problems with an investor, and, I did everything I could do right and everything I could probably do wrong. And, which is great for learning how to be a filmmaker, I think. I had some great luck. I was able to get Isaac Hayes to be in the film.
Oh, that's great, yeah.
And then Martin Sheen gave me, was in Topeka, Kansas, making a miniseries, and And I worked as an activist as well, and I knew the Berrigan brothers, the anti-war priests from the.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And Martin Sheen was good friends with them, and Father Berrigan always told me to try to hook up with Sheen if I could, and so he was good enough to give me an afternoon of shooting in the film, and so I quickly wrote him into the film. And so that the great thing about me taking a long time to make, you can kind of take advantage of all the crazy opportunities that sometimes come your way. And so it was a really challenging experience making that film, and a really beautiful experience.
What was the subject matter of the film?
Well, Night Street was based on a play I wrote. That was a play that really threw me in acceptance in NYU. It was really the black business section of Junction City, and it was also a red light district. And my parents met there, and so growing up, my father was a kind of an unusual family in a way. My father was 60 years old when I was born, and he was born in 1898. And so I had an older father who, was in Mississippi at the turn of the century.
Right.
And then, and my mother was obviously a lot younger. And then, so I grew up, hearing all these stories about Ninth Street. And in Kansas, Ninth Street was a legendary red light district, notorious place. But, I grew up hearing my parents talk about it like an old friend. And it was a blues street, and great jazz musicians should come through there. And so the red light that gave it this notorious, thing. And of course, the red light thing was there because of the soldiers, the 1st Infantry Division. And but it was really a black business street. And there was black barbershops and black cab stands and black cafes and restaurants and nightclubs, and so it was an amazing kind of place. It's well renowned because of the soldiers traveling all over the world would come through Ninth Street, and so in 1976 they tore the street down, and so it kind of became mythical at that point. And so I I wrote a play about it and was able to finally turn it into a film.
And about how long did the actual, production take? I understand it took a long time to actually get to the point where you were doing the film, but, how long a shoot was it? And frankly, how much did it cost you?
Yeah, well, this was in film days now when we're shooting on film.
Right.
And this, it took about 4 years to shoot the film.
Wow.
Okay. And I never had over, most of the time I didn't have over $5,000 at a time. And
right.
so we shoot 3 or 4 days, and then I'd hustle up more money, and we shoot another day, and hustle up more money, and then I had a department of investor that cost me some time, but it took literally from the day we started shooting to the day I sold it. It was 9 years.
That's incredible. Have you ever written down that story?
I've never told that story in detail. I really should, because it is kind of amazing tale. It was, everything else was here after that. Which I think is probably why I keep making movies now, because, after you go through a trial by fire like that, everything else comes, it'll be a lot easier.
Sure. Okay, so that you got that one under your belt, you got it, produced and sold. Where'd you go after that? I mean, were you obviously you were encouraged?
Yes. Well,
yeah.
I was lucky because a guy by the name of Mitch Bryan, who was another Kansas guy who'd gone to L.A., kind of similar to I had gone to New York. He'd gone to L.A. and had some success in L.A., but really kind of was tired of the L.A. thing, was frustrated, and so he'd come back to Kansas, and we both had an interest in Jim Brown, the abolitionist. And he read about me in the paper, an article about Ninth Street, and said that he was interested in writing something about Brooklyn as well. And so we got together and wrote a screenplay about John Brown, and we sold it to 20th Century Fox to Chris Columbus, the guy who did This Is Doubtfire and Home Alone and all those movies. And so it was a big sale, and it launched my screenplay career. So then after that, for about 10 years, I worked from Lawrence as a screenwriter in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And I worked for Oliver Stone, worked for, Columbia Star, and, a lot of different people, and wrote 2 scripts for Oliver Stone. And so I was very fortunate that, to have that kind of success. I never moved to L.A., did it all from Lawrence, and at that same time, I started a new film called CSA, Confederacies of America. And so, even though I was working in Hollywood, I a screenwriter in Hollywood, the most frustrating thing about it is it's great money, but the bad end is typically make your movies.
Right.
And, so the deal. It's like you can have a long career in Hollywood and never have a film produced.
Never see your work on the big screen.
Never see your work on the big screen. And we sold the John Brown script, which was called Shields Green and the Gospel of John Brown. It was, it's told from the point of view of Green, who was one of the slaves with John Brown.
Okay.
And Denzel Washington wanted to play Green. They met with Denzel, and this is before he had 2 Oscars. I think he only had 1 then.
Okay.
And but from what I always heard, they couldn't find someone to play John Brown. They wanted somebody really big, and so the movie's never produced. But I was able to do a lot of other screenplays for various companies. And the only thing that was produced was a miniseries on NBC called The 70s, which was a 2-night series, and probably that's the one that I wish they wouldn't produce.
Hollywood can't be accused of being overly artistic or original at this point.
Boy, no 2 ways about it. Well, I always tell my students, I teach at University of Kansas, and I tell my students, it's business show, not show business,
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about, we were talking about earlier, it's all about, these are corporations, and this is not art at all. These are corporations, especially now it's become, even more corporate. It was probably a little better when I was working in Hollywood, but I think it's really straight up corporations now. And, so they keep making the same movie over and over again as long as it makes money.
Right, right.
So that's kind of the nature of the game.
And I did say this earlier before we started the show that, I advise people that if they're going to try to get some experience, try to get it someplace other than Hollywood, because at this point, if you've got wide-eyed innocence and that desire to all of a sudden, either be a star or be a writer or whatever, I tell them, quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned, Hollywood is where you go for your dreams to die. Because when you look at the entire city, you look at 1.5% of the people employed in Hollywood are employed full-time. That's you're going to be waiting tables, you're going to be washing cars, you're going to be selling your butt, or whatever you're going to do in order to try to hang on in between those times when you may get a shot, and it's tough.
It's really tough, and I was very fortunate that I was able to. I was kind of step into success in Hollywood. If I had been trying to do it, I never would have gotten it, I'm sure.
Right.
But that's usually how it is. When you don't want something, that's when you typically.
Ignorance. Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Ignorance can't be underestimated either, because sometimes if you don't know how hard something is, you're going to try it anyway, and just your persistence, your lucky persistence, can actually get you something that you never suspected happened otherwise, or wouldn't have happened if you tried to do it conventionally.
Exactly. I think, and certainly, Mitch who was Mitch Bryant, who was my writing partner, he had a lot to do with the success of it because he'd already had some success, and so we were able to, he was kind of a proven entity. So this was the first big sale he had when we wrote the John Brown script, and
right,
but if he hadn't had an end, really, it would have been a lot harder.
Yeah, and that's also tough. When you look at traditional black movies nowadays, you have obviously low-hanging fruit of Tyler Perry, but he has a niche he fills well, and he does quite well doing it. Regardless of what you think about his films, he has created an industry around himself, and then you have other people who might want to do something. Not everybody's going to have the success of, and of course, now that I'm talking about him, I can't remember his name. The guy who just wrote The Butler.
Oh yes, Lee Daniels.
Yes, Lee Daniels, The Butler. Not everybody is going to have their Lee Daniels moment. I mean, it's just
that's right. That's right.
Had Forrest Whitaker and Oprah not been attached to the project, I doubt that the project would have gotten done. What do you think?
Well, obviously I'm speculating here, but
of course,
it appears to me that a large part of what green lit the film was obviously Oprah and Forrest Whitaker, but also all the people that played the presidents. I mean, that's a critical part of any film. Is when you're certainly talking about historical things, what lectures can we fill in these? How can we make it, not just a black thing?
Right.
And that's kind of just, it's like when in my class I always talk about, typically those movies are from a white point of view, which is one of the cool things about The Butler. At least it's not from, Kevin Costner's point of view about the Sioux Indians or something. It's,
right. Yes.
It's not Tom Cruise telling you about the samurai. It actually comes from the people the movie's about, which is really good.
Yeah. You're listening to a special pre-recorded edition of the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com, and this is the August 20th in 2013 edition, which we're recording early because we have Kevin Wilmott actually has fair tomorrow night in Chicago that I'm going to try to attend. Again, as everybody knows, if I can get the ankle bracelet off for the night. But we'll come to that a little bit later. So you're kind of still headquartered in Kansas City, and yes. When you do your projects, and teaching probably ties you down a little bit, does it not?
Well, I've been very fortunate to when I was approached to teach, I was working in Hollywood, and again, it was kind of a lucky thing I kind of ran into where they were looking for someone to teach a production class, and they just asked me, and then from there, they eventually asked me to be a full-time professor. And so I kind of stumbled into being a professor as well. And so the schedule I have is really conducive. I only teach really, I teach all day on one day and have office hours on another day, but it allows me to keep working and making films and writing screenplays and doing the work, and they're very supportive of that. So it's been a really great relationship for me.
And generally, you're thought of well. You're treated well. Your students are not hostile to you like they were to me. Well, I think they were hostile to me because I was a sophomore in college, and I was teaching business classes about interpersonal relationships and race relations.
Yeah.
And everybody in the class, these are continuing education adults, and all of a sudden, this guy with the big afro from Chicago is the instructor for whom their grades rely on, and that was not easy. You have a great track record, and you also have demonstrated a demonstrable skills in your craft, and I'm hoping that that teaching for you is a joy, because being able to bring your kind of perspective to the table, I think is a very great educational winning situation.
Well, I appreciate that. I think you're right. I think, I enjoy teaching, and it's I can't say it's what's that the old line about, you try to find a profession you love because it's really not work then, and that's kind of how it is for me. We have a lot of the students in the films I make, and so in that sense, it's not just in classroom, but it's hands-on, working on these feature films we make, and they're a big part of what makes it possible. And then as well, we're training students to have careers themselves, and we've been fortunate to have students that go on to have really careers in filmmaking. And so I think it's a really kind of hip approach, because it allows an independent filmmaker a chance to have a support system, but then really still have the freedom to tell his story, and everybody kind of benefits from it. I benefit from it in terms of getting to tell my story. Students benefit from getting, credits and being in positions that really help them when they decide to move on with their careers. And the school benefits from the success of the films. And so it's an all around great thing. It's again, if I had this all figured out, it never would have happened.
There's nothing wrong with that. Like I said, having great luck is also part of the process. So now, when you're doing most of your, like if you're the producer or the director, do you shoot locally mostly, or do you actually go out west to do the work?
Well, we shoot as local as we can. Certain films call for certain locations, but as a whole, when you make low budget films, and that varies in terms of the budget, but they're all low budget films in one way or another. When you're making movies like that, the local thing is critical, I think. When I'm writing the script, I'm really thinking about the things I have access to, and certainly when I was writing Destination Planet Negro, I was very much thinking about that, and thinking about making choices that from the old genre of screen of science fiction films that we pay homage to, and in the other locations that's revealed the journey of the film. All of that was very much a planned, orchestrated thing from the very beginning. And so, a movie I have called The Only Good Indian that we made a few years ago, that's a Western, and it's with Wes Studi. And in that film, we did go out to kind of more like Western Kansas, where the Flint Hills are. And so, we do some traveling around, but it's in a limited, really kind of orchestrated way.
Well, and also, the thing that you said earlier about how it actually gives your students some hands-on experience that they might not have any other way. I mean, that's got to be great for them. Is it a fairly popular program on campus?
Oh, yeah, very much so. I mean, the film school has really grown, leaps and bounds, and I think that we have students now that come to me and have heard about our movies, and they want to specifically kind of get in the mix, and I had a couple years ago, I had a student who from the very beginning came to me and said, I want to learn to be an editor. And
sure,
he edited he was one of the editors on The Only Good Indian, which was the Sundance, and now he's an editor on the TV show The Bachelor. And so he went right from graduation right into a job in Hollywood, which that's incredibly rare, and yeah. And so and it was not just luck. It was luck, but it was also he was. I think he saw in the world of independent film how you got to be a hustler, and you got to really get out there and make things happen, and he did that, and that's why I think he has succeeded.
And there's a certain amount of luck that you actually need, because, like you said, if you don't hustle, if you can't show somebody that you can benefit them, benefit their productions, benefit their work, you're not going to get the job. I don't think, and especially in a tight economy, nobody's giving away jobs.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And I always tell my students, Hollywood's job is to say no. It's not to say yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
They say no all day long. And when you find a way to make them say yes, it's really truly a miracle. And it's because you have something typically they want in one way or another. And that's something that you have had, sometimes it's a little bit of luck, but it's also perseverance and skill and a bunch of other things,
And that's one of the things that I advise people, not just in the film genre, but the fact of the matter is the art of getting any business done these days is the art of remove every reason for someone to say no. Because everybody has front-loaded, 250 reasons to say no to whatever it is you want, and it's your job to take those things out of contention, take those things off the table in order to have any chance at all.
That's exactly it, and so yeah, you've got to really love it, and it's got to be what you kind of put on earth to do in some way, and just really stay with it. And I think everybody that I've seen have some success have been folks who this is kind of who they are in one way or another, and they have no choice but to keep doing it, and eventually if they stay with it long enough and get better at it, they usually get a break at some point.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about tomorrow night. Tomorrow night you're screening a movie here in Chicago, and what's the title?
Destination Planet Negro.
And how did this come about in your crazy head?
That's exactly it, my crazy head. Well, I've always, I'm a fan of science fiction. I'm a lover of science fiction. I grew up really, I love Rod Serling. And as a kid, I loved movies that taught me about black and taught me about, race and about, race relations and, what in the 1940s they were called problem pictures,
Sure.
And movies that really dealt with the problem. And so many episodes of Twilight Zone, dealt with the problem. Problems. Almost all problems. It's hard to find an episode of Twilight Zone that doesn't deal with a problem.
And they were very universal themes. They were very universal themes that everybody could relate to, which is one of the reasons why they were popular.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, it wasn't just that they were, some of them bridged on science fiction or horror, some of them were this or that, but every single one of them had something to say. I saw one when I was very young, and I apologize for digressing, but it was the one where the slot machine followed the guy into the room.
Yeah.
At the end. That so scared me. It stuck with me for a long time. And that wasn't necessarily science fiction, but it was done in such a way that the horror, the irony, the suspense, everything. And think about those episodes were not long. That wasn't movie length. They didn't have all of that time. They had 22 to 26 minutes to make a show.
Yeah. Yeah. And they used all of it.
Oh yeah. And so, but I do want to ask you something, because you mentioned, obviously those were influences of yours, but they couldn't have been influences of yours for dealing with the sociology of race or the the culture of race, because let's be honest, back then if you watch science fiction from that era, we're not going to be here in the future.
Occasionally, Ivan Dixon would show up in a space as an astronaut or something, but it was very, very rare, You're right. It was really just kind of seeing the opportunity that science fiction provided. That was the big influence on me.
Sure.
It was the opportunity of seeing that the genre really provides this ability to reveal, what we can't really see.
Right.
And to make the invisible visible. And so that's the thing that I've always been interested in terms of it. In my film, CSA Confederate States of America, which is about what happens when the South wins the Civil War, I call it science fiction because, it shows their victory at Gettysburg all the way to today, and slavery is going on today. And then people say, well, do you really think slavery would still go on today? And I said, well, apartheid was certainly going on in South Africa until the 1980s, and Reagan and Thatcher were still making excuses for it.
Right.
And so, and people go, oh, yeah, I guess I never thought about it like that. And it's like, well, that's exactly right. I mean, from the black point of view, from the African-American point of view, we don't have to go very far to justify what appears on the surface to be extreme choices.
Yes.
And, because these extreme choices have all affected our lives in all these various ways. We were talking before about, the atomic bomb and the internment camps. I mean, you can't believe that they would do something like that today. But it was...
Yeah, I tell people that about my folks, about my father and the whole Japanese half of his family. They locked up in a concentration camp. And the look on their faces like, well, where was that? Was that in Japan? Was that on Okinawa? No, that was Utah. That was Utah. And then they go, really? And I go, yeah. And that's the other thing. As we get further and further out, as that time falls further and further behind, it is being lost to antiquity. I mean, now you have school systems that are trying to write out slavery in their history books.
And I think you've hit my whole kind of love of the genre because, to me, in the past, and I guess it's because I have older parents and because I grew up in kind of an odd racial world in a sense, but exactly what you're describing, I just think is critical to being an American and to be living in a democratic society and to in a world where race can move forward, And the fact that and I don't call it political correctness, I call it corporate correctness. It's really, to me, it's not political correctness. It's really, these choices come out, they come out of corporate kind of attitudes and interests and fears of not losing money, and that's where the shit comes from. It doesn't come out of a love for one's fellow man and woman. It comes out of like, if we get into this is a problem for us, so we're just not going to talk about it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And let's look at recent history. The Tea Party did not exist until corporate interests bust the lowest common white denominator to these rallies, these anti-Obamacare rallies, anti-Obama rallies. The whole Tea Party movement was a corporate movement, and people think, that was people rising up. No, that was people being fed lunch and given hide, and having somebody paint up those racist signs with a president with a bone in the nose and things like that. And nowadays, what's very disappointing, because, you look at the Goldwater Republicans, you look at the conservatives of times past. Conservatives of times past would be appalled that we have a Department of Homeland Security. Conservatives would be appalled that people are trying to impose legislation on a woman's womb. Conservatives of past these are neoconservatives, and these are also people who have been scared to death. I was going to use the S word, but they've been scared to death that, first of all, they were laid under rocks because their views, their vocalizations, everything they wanted to discuss was just not politically correct, nor was it tolerated by their family. But you elect a half-black president, and all of a sudden, you've got these people scared that they're going to lose their privilege or something, and now, look what's happened to this country. So what you're talking about, you talk about, okay, we had apartheid up until then. We have this. Now we have stand and deliver is basically legal license to kill people.
Exactly.
And people go, oh, it's not that. And I go, well, then why do we have the huge dichotomy between blacks and whites over what the implication of George Zimmerman's verdict was? We see a race problem in this country. We're not post-racial just because we elected a man of African descent, an American of African descent to the White House. You look at part of that, people probably looked at John McCain and Sarah Palin and probably just got scared to death of what could have happened, more so, because, well, let's be honest, for the last 2 generations, we've been offered nothing better than the lesser of 2 evils. Right. And when you're offered nothing better than the lesser of 2 evils, and this is not to say that Barack Obama was evil, but when people go, oh, well, here's our choice. Ooh, are we going to elect a black guy to the presidency, or are we going to have this crazy-ass woman being one heartbeat away from the presidency with an old guy who is a former prisoner of war who walks around with Tyrannosaurus Rex arms? Oh, I apologize. That was cruel of me. I apologize. But see, we could easily, look at the rights that are being taken away from people. You're having voting rights taken away from blacks, from the young, from Hispanics, from the elderly. And if you disenfranchise people by taking away their vote, how hard is it to imagine that you could take other rights away or put them in a second-class citizenship kind of situation? And so let's bring that back around. That's probably one of the best reasons, if you want to talk sociology, for you to have done this movie. Tell us a little bit about Destination Planet Negro.
Well, I'd say, William, you've seen the film. It deals with exactly what you described, and it does it in a very funny, very satirical, very humorous, pointed kind of way. But it is exactly that. And the thing that one of the big conclusions that I came to after finishing the film and writing the film and all that was that the thing you're talking about, that the real problem we have with the problem President Obama has with the Tea Party people and all the right-wing people that are trying to destroy him, that is that they don't want to acknowledge the past. It's inherent in the belief system that you cannot acknowledge the past, and you cannot allow the past any effect on today.
Mm-hmm.
So the behavior of today, it's like we all started yesterday.
They want to paint it in a vacuum.
In a total vacuum. It is like, I like to term it like we just grew out of the groove. And
yeah, I see. Yeah.
You just turn around and we were just there, and the things that your parents went through and my parents went through and the things that we went through and all of that never happened and never affected us and never affected our attitudes or our points of view and the people that affected us, aren't the way they are, And so all of that is it's an amazing thing, because I just saw today where they were talking about that horrible murder in Oklahoma, and where these 3, I guess 2 black kids and maybe a mixed kid or a white kid or something, that they're saying it's going to be a hate crime now, and maybe it shouldn't be a hate crime. I don't know all details of the case, but they were comparing it to why is Al Sharpton upset about that, and why aren't white people upset about this? And it's like, black people are upset about that. What they did was horribly wrong, and maybe there was some hatred toward this unfortunate man being white. Maybe it was, but it's not the same long, ugly struggle that we're talking about.
Well, they want to put some equivalency on that, a false equivalency on like that. You know, anytime a white man is by a black man, they go, well, why aren't you upset about that? And my answer is exactly like you said. I am upset about that, but it's not the same. And I have people that I've talked to, and I'll bring up racial issues, and they're indignant, like, well, you know, how dare you talk to me about that? I mean, they're actually angry that I have the nerve to bring up the fact that we have the history in this country that we have.
Right. Yeah, and that's that thing that we don't want to acknowledge, and I think that's why we were so, you know, when President Obama was elected, we so quickly, and I think for corporate reasons in many ways, wanted to say we're a racial society. You know, now it proves that we're past, we put all this stuff behind us because now we can just get back to making money, you know, and then these things keep popping up, and they keep reminding us that we're not there yet, you know, we're not there yet, and certainly the conservatives desperately want to be past it because then they can just remove everything that was designed to give somebody a fair shake. You know, and so, you know, it's just kind of this when you really get down to it. But the film, you know, I think it is a vehicle to kind of explore and expose and have fun with our whole entirely crazy kind of world dealing with right now, where we've advanced so far and at the same time we've regressed in ways that we never thought we would reach. You know? And that's the weird dichotomy of today. You know, we've taken, you know, 20 steps forward and 30 steps back. You know, and it's remarkable. I mean, you want to, you know, when President Obama was elected, I just kept thinking about my parents and my father growing up in Mississippi at the turn of the century, and unfortunately both my parents have passed away. But you know, and as a kid, and you know the deal, you think all the conversations you had about a black president would never happen. If it did happen, he would immediately be shot. You know? Right. And you know, and the fact that we would never believe this would ever happen in any kind of
not in our lifetime. Yeah.
Not in our lifetime. You know, and I think it's not to forget that. Not to forget that it wasn't a couple of years ago that you know, and the still I always use is that if President Bush hadn't been so bad, Obama wouldn't have been elected. Because
absolutely.
Bush, even the white was doing pretty good.
It is true, and I'll tell you, there was no more frightening moment with President Obama's election was on Inauguration Day when he and Michelle got out of the car and started walking down the street. Every single black person in America was just praying, I pray he doesn't get shot. Because that was and white folks can't, white people just can't, they can't grasp the historical fear that we have, you know, for that. I mean, they have no concept.
You know, you're talking about for valid reasons. I mean, we've seen, you know, those of us who grew up in the 60s and 70s, like, you know, we did it. You know, we saw those people assassinated. You know, and so we know what happened. You know, and that's part of that thing we're supposed to forget, I think. You know.
Well, they get very upset. Well, and then you have whites. They go, well, why mad at me? You know, I didn't own any slaves. I said, I'm not mad at you, but I'm disappointed in you because you will stand there and you will tell me with a straight face that you think affirmative action is reverse racism. And I said, first of all, that's a misnomer because you can't be racist if you're not part of the dominant culture. So I can't be racist if I hate you just for your skin color. And they go, well, why is that? They don't get that. They don't get that affirmative action is reached for 500 years of slights, 500 years of a tilted playing field, 500 years of being uneven, 500 years of us not being allowed to pursue the American dream in a way that the dominant culture can.
Exactly. And you know, and that whole thing, that unwillingness to to acknowledge the past, and really just to even acknowledge it, and acknowledge it in a way that we know some effect on us today. And, and certainly we have progressed, and we acknowledge that in the film. I mean, the whole thing in the movie about folks in 1939 who, are so desperate to solve the Negro problem that we're going to go to Mars, and we're that desperate, and because we just can't find there's no solution that we can see. And you end up arriving in today, we do some kind of weird time travel, going through a black hole, no pun intended. And you go through the black hole, and suddenly you're here, and there's a black president. Yeah. And on the surface, it appears like, oh my God, this is Planet Negro, and then you find out, well, we're not quite yet. Not quite yet.
So from what you said, here's the premise I get. Actually, you have people from an earlier time who get displaced in time and come here today with their prehistory sensibilities. Is that correct?
Exactly. I mean, they are black leaders from 1939 who black leadership has gotten together to try to solve the Negro problem. And they flew the money and built a rocket ship with the help of George Washington Carver with a rocket fuel made of peanuts and sweet potatoes.
Yeah. Okay.
They have created a rocket fuel in a rocket, and we make fun of all those great 1950s, rockets, silver bullet rocket ship movies. The title really comes from Destination Moon.
The original the sci-fi classic, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, the George Powell movies, and Rocket Ship XM, all of that stuff. And so, we were able to embrace the budget kind of effects they did with those movies, and kind of do it in a humorous kind of homage, kind of, with love and respect, I think. And so they're going to Mars in the hope that we're going to find a home for black folks finally. And some of them, they go through this time thing and end up, and they think when they arrive, they think they're on another planet. I mean, they think that,
they're actually here. It's the Planet of Apes slingshot effect.
It's the Planet of the Apes slingshot effect, yes. And I think it's that vehicle. Science fiction provides that vehicle to remind African Americans of how far we've come, and then to expose the difficulties of today, how far we still need to go. And then the thing I kind of love about the film is that it goes into what you've been describing, though, that the Tea Party is the bad guys in the film. So you guys from 1939 who dress like people from 1939 and end up today, and they end up walking into a Tea Party rally full of people in Revolutionary War uniform, talking about this is the real America. The 1776 is the real America, not the 2013 America.
Oh, man.
So again, it's like here black people have, for our whole lives in this country, been trying to get to a future that would give us some relief and some freedom and some peace of mind. And so, all of our efforts have been towards that. And we come in conflict with people who are trying to go back and going back to what they call the good old days.
Exactly.
And so no one knows that better than someone from 1939.
Yes. Oh, that's brilliant, but it also it hurts my heart because we touched on it a little bit earlier, but I've just finished the second installment of a very, very similar a trilogy with a very similar storyline, but the big difference is the people who I have populating my universe in the 1960s. A young black astrophysics student at an all-white school discovers how to control gravity. And he doesn't tell anybody. Instead, what he does is he slowly recruits like-minded friends, and what they do is they manage to build a ship they get to the backside of the moon, which is out of visible, eyesight of people here on Earth, and they build the first moon colony in 1967. And what they do is they live and they coexist. They create their society absent any white people. It's blacks only. And someone mentioned to me, oh, this guy just he just did a movie about your book. And now that I hear your entire premise, I'm going, oh my God, it's almost like there are no ideas, but yours is executed so exquisitely. To bring people from that era to their future, to see that, well, we have a little bit of change, but we don't have a lot of change. I think if you've executed that well, that's going to be a great movie, Kevin.
Well, I appreciate that, man, and I also think that from what you mentioned about your book, that the thing about what we do is that it's very, very, very large. I think that sometimes black artists, we kind of feel like we can step each other's toes, but in reality, your story is light years different than mine, and I think it sounds amazing, and could be a film easily as well, and should be a film, and we're just barely touching this genre we're talking about. We just barely poked it, and even though there's some similarities in terms of the efforts of black people, my film will be told in the way it's told, and it's told in a humorous, satirical, but your film could even be a dramatic film, and it will be very different, and it sounds like it is dramatic, and so, in that sense, I mean, I think that, it's beautiful, and we need more of it, not less of it. And I think there's a room for all of these stories, and many more like this. I mean, the black experience is such a profound experience that, I think the outside corporate world makes us feel it's kind of small because they only celebrate certain things from it. You know what I mean?
Well, and they don't control it. It's not something they control. I mean, I think it's very similar to how they try to maintain control of, look at how they've maintained control of the music industry.
Exactly.
If we were to be entirely honest, black urban culture rules the world in terms of music.
Yes.
From little tiny, 9-year-old Japanese girls to you hear nothing but rap music in Belarus and things like that.
Yeah.
And I think that because, again, exactly to what you said, because of the financial aspect, because of commerce, you're going to have people pay a certain kind of attention to it, but so far they have not managed to seize control of black science fiction because it is such a niche product, and quite honestly, it didn't exist a very short time ago. A very short time ago, it didn't exist.
It didn't exist, and that's exactly right. And I think, the minute that somebody makes a lot of money in black science fiction, they're going to be all over it. And because that's the way it always works, right? And so I think what you're talking about, and more power to you. I think it sounds like a beautiful story, a beautiful set of novels there, and I would love to see it as a movie.
Thank you very much. I mean, I wrote it, and I don't want to talk about I did write it in a very visual style. It's a quick read. It's 500 pages, but people read it very fast.
Uh-huh.
But the reason I would want to see it done is for the reason you would want to see it done, because it would speak to a certain. It would have sociological impact, okay, and it would have cultural impact. And I tried very carefully. I mean, I admit, I tell people I've got issues. Okay, I got a Japanese half of the family that got thrown in a concentration camp for being Japanese and living in the San Francisco area. I've got a black half of my family that got thrown out of Oklahoma because my black grandfather was a better cattle rancher than the whites around him, so accused him of being a cattle rustler, which, of course, back in that time just meant immediate hanging. I mean, you just get hung. They just hang you. They hang you for that. And so, yeah, I got anger issues, but I didn't want to write an angry book. And I appreciate your kind words. I mean, if you do ever read it, I would definitely like to talk about it. But the fact of the matter is, you've done something brilliant because you've done it with humor. And when you do things with humor, not only are you allowed to get away with things, some people don't even know that you're getting away with them. And that's the coolest, slickest part about what you have done. I mean, seriously, I haven't seen the movie. No, I don't know of the movie. But just knowing how you executed it and the way you did it, I mean, dude, that's brilliant. I mean, it's just brilliant. You deserve a crap load of success, man. And just so that people know, there is a screening at it's the Gene Siskel Center here in Chicago. Unfortunately, people will hear this show probably while this show will be broadcast. And let me remind people, this is a pre-recorded edition of the Genesis Science Fiction Radio, a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. But I'm still going to post up a lot of information about it because I would like to see people get there, and I'm going to try to get myself because I just want to meet you.
Well, that's great, man. And likewise, man. Well,
no, I'm serious. You've got a great mind. You don't meet great minds very often. I don't meet great minds very often. And the fact that this is such a slick movie. You're to be commended. And if you executed it well, which it sounds like, I have every confidence in the fact that you did so. Everybody needs to see this.
Well, it's a really fun movie, and it's it does really speak to today in a really kind of an amazing way. I think that all of us, black, white, everybody, I think we're really frustrated right now. I think people are really, I think President Obama is such a great man on so many levels, and to see all the things that he would love to achieve, just totally stifled by these people. It's kind of an amazing moment in history. You see, it's like 50 years from now, like we're looking at the March on Washington. They'll be looking back 50 years now at the Obama administration and President Obama's presidency, and they'll be talking about the insane racism that he had to go through.
Exactly.
And it'll be looked at that way, and they'll be talking about all these different elements that go today kind of unspoken and unchecked, and it's just very frustrating to see this, going on, and all this amazing opportunity going to waste because we've got people that want to live in a dark time somewhere.
Right.
And it's just kind of an amazing moment.
Now, what time is the movie supposed to show on Friday?
It starts at about 8:30, I think it is, and we'll get there by 8, and the thing is, I'm hoping, if we have success with it in Chicago at the Black Heart Film Festival there, that I'm hoping that we'll get a run in some theaters in Chicago, and people will have an opportunity to see it again.
Actually, I might have a week for you to do that. So that's another reason for me to make my way. Actually, when people hear this, I'm already talking to you. Because we're still pre-recorded. But yeah, that would be spectacular. So talk about the whole evolution of it. Obviously, you came up with the idea of doing this movie. Take us through the steps, the kinds of the steps that you had to take to do it, and did you run into any problems along the way?
Well, it was an idea I had kind of for a long time, but it didn't really. The second half of the movie was the hard part for me, and it was the beginning was always kind of been in my head for a long time. I would joke with my students that if you walk down, the main street of any city and say, how's your movie going? And everybody that you run into will have a great first act of a movie. And the problem is they have a second, or everyone have a second act, which is like the problem. And so I really pondered it for quite a while, this second half of the film, really. And then it really was, I think, when President Obama became president, and all of that opposition came out against him in the form of the Tea Party. Mm-hmm. That it really all connected up, because as we were saying, it's like they are the embodiment of going back in time, whereas there's a line in the film one of the black astronauts has, and she says, we always loved America for its potential, not its reality. And that's what we've always loved America for its potential, and now there are people that the fact that we've reached some of that potential are saying now that the country's gone horribly wrong. And now we need to go back to when we were slaves ultimately. And not literally do they want to see us slaves, but they certainly want to see they don't want to see someone like President Obama being the face of the government, And so anyway, the point being is that when that kind of all came together, gave me the second half of the film, which was I needed a villain in the movie in many ways, and I think the Tea Party is I wouldn't say the villain. I'd say they are like most people who are duped by political maneuvering. They are they're people that are probably good people at heart who have been horribly misguided by fear and by political
fear and lies. But there's they've done studies. There's about 18% of white Americans are truly steeped in very racist attitudes, and those people are going to be they're going to be upset no matter what.
Exactly.
But the thing that's so disappointing is the going back to your missive about corporations. Corporate media and corporate creations have given this racist segment of America cover.
Right.
They've legitimized whatever it is that these people want to spew, because that they give them a voice, they give them time, they give them credence, where somebody with some education would look at how totally ludicrous their antics are, and their claims and their fears. But it's not just them. I went to a lecture by Kenneth Warren. He's a Harvard-educated, University of Chicago instructor, black, and he postulates that there is no such thing anymore as black literature, because we do not have the sociological pushback of slavery holding us back. And so all of a sudden he says that we're in a post-racial black literature society where there is no such thing as black literature, because you can only have a classification of literature like that if there is oppression, some sort of naked oppression that is holding the genre or whatever back. And this is from a black academic, and I went to his lecture, and I had to get up and I had to say, well, first of all, it will assume that merely because I am not 3/5 of a man and some can't just buy my ass at auction,
right,
that we are not in some way, still living through the ravages of what slavery did to us as a people, I think it's ludicrous. And then I said, and if we take your argument to its logical conclusion, then there are only two types of literature left in America, and that's American literature and LGBT literature. And then he stopped in front of all those people. He stopped, he thought about it, and he said, you may be right, which was, to see that come from a Harvard-educated black man was pretty disappointing to me. And I know that sounds bad of me, like I'm passing judgment, but when you think about the fact that he's in class teaching that, and that's at the University of Chicago.
Exactly. No two ways about it. And I think that, again, I think, higher education falls into the same corporate issues that, Exxon and AT&T and, all the other corporate fall into,
Sure.
And so, there's an element of that, I mean, I think, one of the things that the way I think, guys like us grew up, we didn't grow up in the ghetto straight out, but certainly we knew people in the ghetto. And it's important not to kind of forget that most people are still in the ghetto.
Yeah.
And hasn't changed all that much. I mean, certainly things have gotten better, but things have gotten worse in other ways. And
right.
And so, I agree with you totally. I mean, just because, and that's part of what I think we show in the film, that just because there's not this blatant Jim Crow, we have a scene where they end up getting arrested, and they're in the jail cell, and my teacher says, who's one of the astronauts in the film, I say, well, I thought you said Jim Crow segregation was over. And the guy goes, well, it is. He says, well, why is everybody in here black?
Yeah.
And then the joke is, well, there's a couple of Mexicans over there, and
America's new Negroes.
Yeah, exactly. And so the thing is that there's still Jim Crow. Just go to the prison, and you'll see Jim Crow. You'll see all the Jim Crows you want to see, and America's still segregated in all kind of various ways.
Yeah.
I mean, big cities in particular are still incredibly segregated. And so we still have a long way to go. And this whole idea that we're past racial, black literature or something like that, in the way that that people wrote about it in the 1920s, we probably are a little bit different than that. But now it's like George Orwell or something. There are all these mechanisms that control us, but they're not visible, and they're hard to point out, and they are far difficult to illustrate to people, and that becomes, I think, people like artists like us. That's the challenge to us, is to find ways to reveal those things,
right?
Because people are feeling it. White and black people feel it. White and black people know there's something, that they're still oppressed in some weird kind of way, but they know it's not the way it used to be. So, so he's just been disconnected from the folks back in the neighborhood who will tell you in a heartbeat that it's still that way.
Well, and, I don't want to say this because I don't know, and he's not here to defend himself. But I will tell you what would be very disappointing. What would be very disappointing is if somehow, because of where he is, who he is, and the job he has, that he has fallen into the new paradigm of the class struggle between the house and the field Negro.
You really enjoy the film because we talk about that as well.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. I mean, that's exactly it. It's more now probably about class than it is about race, in various ways. And the separation between black people are separations that have to do mainly with class now. And it is hard, people like us who don't live in the ghetto ghetto and are not in close contact with people in the ghetto every day, you have to make it to still understand what's going on. And some people are just not interested in making that effort.
Well, I'll be honest with you. There are days, and I'm not going to lie. You know, I volunteer, I help build schools, I do that. But there are days when I want to come to my place, come home, just relax, and for just a day, I would like to say to myself, don't think about that today, because in a lot of ways, it's just as daunting. It's just as debilitating. It's just as dehumanizing as it may have been 200 years ago, but it's in a different way. It's in a different guise. So the first thing you have to do is you have to figure out, what's the protective coloring they're using now? And then the next thing you have to do is you have to figure out what is the most effective strategy to A, uncover this, and B, reverse it. And there are days, there are times when you just go, I can't do this struggle 365 days out of the year. Okay? For you can't struggle as a black independent filmmaker every single day and not sit there and go, you know what? Why the hell can't I get Spielberg money to make a movie? Or for me, why the hell can't I get Stephen King advances to write just this last novel and get it out there? And the guise is different. But the fact of the matter is, we know it's still there. You feel it, and people who are living in those situations, they feel it every day. The day that they can't go to the job or they don't have a job, they know what's going on. Okay, well, how come I don't have a job? Well, the playing field is stacked against you. Well, why is that? Well, it's a fine American tradition, so shut the hell up. What's wrong with you? Don't mess with things. Don't mess with the status quo, because they'll take more away from you. They'll make you more miserable. You should just keep your damn mouth shut,
And the point well taken about, I think, people, artists in particular, or, ordinary citizens who care about these things, it's like, I dislike most Hollywood movies these days. They're just, they're just pretty dumb. But, but occasionally I will watch a film just to escape for a minute, and what I call guilty pleasures, and those guilty pleasures are fine, but it's having a steady diet of that becomes the problem,
when it's pablum, when it's being fed to you as pablum, and you're sucking it down, and you don't realize that the chemicals and the lack of nutrients and the allowable number of rat hairs in there, all of this is subtracting from who you are.
Exactly. That's exactly it. And so I think when you talk about it, that must between because when you start talking heavy, like this is a heavy conversation we're having, but it's also in my world, and I think in your world, it's also a normal conversation. And it's not, but when you get around other people that start having this conversation, there's always that person that says, well, I guess we didn't solve the world's problems today ever. And it's like, and it's like, to me, when people say that, they're kind of like saying, why are we even talking about this? And the point is that we should all be talking about this all the time. And it shouldn't be rare, and it shouldn't be uncomfortable. And that's one of my big words, the uncomfortable thing. Because, when you see the nationalists we want to have a national conversation about race. Well, the reason you don't see that conversation is because people immediately get uncomfortable. Black folks get uncomfortable. White folks get big time uncomfortable. And so it is the challenge for us is to be able to talk about this all the time, so it doesn't take a Trayvon Martin horrible event like that to make us and have the stupid conversation. Because if we were talking about it all the time, which is the conversation how it really should be. I mean, it wouldn't be like, oh, this special, special announcement. Let's all talk about Negroes for a minute.
Right.
I mean,
right.
It is, that's part of the problem, and it needs to become like second nature to people. People need to be able to talk about race like they talk about their sports teams. They need to be able to talk about it in everyday terms, and in terms where they're not in fear of talking about race to coworkers and people that beyond their close friends. They need to be able to feel like they're not going to get their head blown off because they say the wrong thing. Right. And that's going to take a while to get to. I mean, we still got a long way from getting there.
And it's not just race. I mean, let's look at the gun debate. I mean,
exactly.
we had this horrific thing happen in Newtown. All right.
Yes.
You can imagine as well as I can, because we actually saw the soldiers coming back from Vietnam. We know what those bullets did to those tiny little children.
Yeah.
But they dare not show that. They dare not show that and that's a corporate thing. That's not a race thing. That's a corporate thing. Because if you show those pictures, assault weapon sales in this country are done. They're done. They will never sell another assault, and people will go door to door and take yours away from you if we show those pictures. So it's not just race, but we have become a society of people who are addicted to avoidance.
Boy, that's the deal. It's a culture of denial, and the thing when you talk about the Vietnam thing in particular, again, we grew up on the evening news seeing guys taken to the helicopters and wounded, and we saw that every night. Eating supper, we saw that every night, and after the Vietnam War, they figured out that we better never show that stuff again, because if we do, then the whole, it's like we're pulling the curtain back, and we see the whole machine there.
It became policy. Yes, it became national policy. Yeah, I'm sorry.
You've been exposed, and so that's exactly what you're talking about. It's my next film is going to be a movie about Emmett Till, and interesting because I'm kind of fast becoming the guy who makes the movies that nobody else in America kills the baby. And it's that movie should be 30 years ago, and but why hasn't that movie been made? Well, because it's a tough story, and it's a story that doesn't end in a nice, pretty successful kind of way. I mean, we know how it ends. It ends with the creation of the civil rights movement, but in terms of the Hollywood ending, there's, Jackie Robinson doesn't get to, change America at the end of the movie,
Right.
I mean, right. Emmett Till was murdered, and it's a horrible crime, and no one was punished for it.
I have someone refer you to that. She was a reporter at the Chicago Defender, the old black-owned news, and she interviewed the family. I mean, you're probably in touch with the family, but I may have some people for you to talk to about that may help you out. Hang on a second. You're listening to a special pre-recorded edition of the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Program, a service of the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com website. And tonight's guest is director and writer of Destination Planet Negro, which is at the showing at the Gene Siskel Film Center right as this show is airing. Is only being shown once.
It's also being shown Monday night, the 27th, I believe it is, at 8 o'clock, I believe.
Oh, great. I'm going to try to put that on the calendar and put some notices out. So, because, obviously this show is going to be running at the same time the Friday night show is going to be on.
Sure.
Going and dealing with Emmett Till, the first thing people are going to say is, well, why do you want to dredge that up? That's over with. Why can't you be sensitive to the family? And if I don't want your job, I'm not taking your job on a bet, okay? Because, no, I'm serious, man. You know, I'm old and I'm tired, okay? You know, and I make a joke about this, and this is a running joke, but it's only partly a joke. You know, I tell people I am old, and they go, well, how old are you? I give them the number, and they go, well, that ain't that old. And I go, yeah, though, but see, what you don't understand is those are not regular people years. Those are not white people years. Those are black man years. Black man years, unfortunately, happen to be, you know, 4, 5, 6 years longer than white people years. You know, like cat or a dog. It's not the same. And sometimes I get tired. You know, of having to go through the same stuff every day. But for you to go ahead and bet on, I mean, that's huge. That's a great thing, Kevin. You know, I want to encourage everybody to get out and on Monday night and see Destin and Planet Negro at the Gene Siskel Center. And then the other thing is, do you have a distributor yet?
No, we don't.
And how long is the movie? Is it feature length?
It's feature length. It's 135 minutes.
All right, and just, I mean, if you can tell me, what did it cost you to get the movie?
You know, William, if I told you, you know, this is a low budget film.
Well, hey, look, you're talking to a guy who did I did a $70,000 movie production trailer for $130 in food. So believe me, you know, you have to do everything you can. Use every single resource you can, because you know what? If George Lucas can't get money, do Red Tails.
Boy,
you know, you're going to have a hell of a time getting the funding to an Emmett Till movie. This is not going to be an easy movie for you to get funding for. And I'm not going to talk about, you know, Spike Lee and his crowdsourcing or anything like that, because if we were to be honest, every independent black film out there has been crowdsourced. Every one of them.
No, you're right, and you know the way that, you know, when you don't have money, you have time, and so you know, and the old adage, time is money, and so we shot Destination over a year.
Yeah.
And I knew that going in, and so that saved me a lot of money. And so, you know, I think that's a way for people to, you know, that can hold a project together that long. You know, it's not easy to hold a project together that long. That's one of the reasons I played one of the parts. But, you know, you've got to kind of know that you've got the right, you know, the right cast, and especially the right cast, and that can stay with you and not change their appearance and not get sick, not have to move, and all the things that you know, the risk that you take in doing a long-term project like it's risky, obviously, but it is a way to get your movie made.
Are you? I presume this will probably be out on DVD, correct?
Yes.
Did you have the wherewithal and the time and the energy to do a how it was made, or a behind-the-scenes, you know, documentary of getting the movie done?
Yeah, we do have a pretty good, and we have some stills from on our website, you know, planetneek.com, that shows some of the making of the film, and yeah, you know, it's a combination of people I've worked with, professionals from the worked with for years now, and I have an ensemble of actors from Kansas City that I work with, and then combined with students who come in and out and help in various different ways, and you know, it's the combination of all elements that kind of that makes it work.
That brought it all together.
Yes.
Man, I honest to God, I hope to be able to meet you tomorrow. I mean, this is extraordinary, Kevin. I mean, and this is a great opportunity for me. It's one of the reasons why I do this. And also the big paycheck I get for every show. Enormous.
It's great for me too, man, because, you know, people like yourself, I know, you know, I think all of us, you know, who are out here in the trenches trying to get things done, I think, especially writing is a very lonely profession to some degree, and and you feel like you're kind of out there in the middle of nowhere half the time, and so it's to be able to speak to brothers like you that understand what it's all about, and understand the obstacles and the odds and all the things that we'd all go through in all our various ways to we're trying to go, and so it's really been a pleasure, man.
Well, we got a few minutes left. Let's talk about let's talk about your family a little bit. I mean, how are they? I would imagine they're very supportive.
Yes, very much so. And I've got I've got 5 kids, and they work on the films in various different ways, and sometimes they're in front of the camera, sometimes they're behind the camera, and I have a son that's really a pretty terrific. His name is Wilmott. And in Planet Negro, he paints. The movie opens up at Booker T. Washington University in 1939, and he painted this really great portrait of Booker T. Washington we used in the film. And so, I mean, it is those kind of things. I mean, that's what makes it fun. It's really, I call it kind of being the Black Amish. We kind of do this fundraising thing, and it's really blue collar work, which is really, I just really like that about all of this. That it is really about just going to work, and it's nuts and bolts, and it's staying with it until the job's done. And my father was a hod carrier, which I don't know if you know what that is. Hod is you know because you're old school like me, but hod is the mortar that you use to build a building.
That's right. Yeah.
And so my father, was a hod carrier, the Hod Carrier Common Laborers Union that he belonged to, and all day he was carrying hod all day. And when I was a kid, he was in his 60s, still carrying hod, and
sure.
And he'd leave the house looking one way and come home looking another way, and it just taught you that hard work is kind of what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a real I kind of find a real joy in the fact that making movies the way we have to make them is hard work, but it's very rewarding.
Yeah, and how old is your son, the artist?
He is 23. I've got three boys and 2 girls, and the oldest is just 30, and I got one that's 27 and 23 and 18 and soon to be 16.
And are they all interested in the movie making aspect of your life, or are some gravitating in other directions?
Well, they're all doing their own thing. My oldest son is actually a farmer.
Really? That's cool.
I think it's kind of cool, and he loves farming, he loves agriculture, and so I think that when you're around an artist kind of world, and people that were my friends that came in and out of our house, and also I was an activist, and so political people and all the various influences that you have in a family.
Right.
I think it tells people, it tells your kids that just do the thing that you want to do.
Right.
And I was very fortunate that my parents, just never, older people, so they didn't do that whole thing of expecting me to be some specific thing. They wanted me to do my thing, and so I was very, I see so many young people that parents that put all this pressure on them for, in my opinion, all the wrong reasons. And young people have to have a chance to figure it out and to do their thing, and you got to help guide them, you got to help show them the way, but they've got to figure it out for themselves to a large degree. And so anyway, they're all different. One's an artist, one's a farmer, one's a musician, and my girls are still trying to still in school trying to figure it out. Right. But they're all their own people in their own way.
That's great. I mean, it's good to have a family. I mean, not everybody has family around, but to have one that's as supportive as that, it's like a certain load off your mind because it's not something that's always tickling you in the back of your head. But to have them share in the joy of what you do it sounds perfectly wonderful to me.
Yeah, I think they've learned a lot from it. I think, certainly I think young people today, especially, been talking about the difficulties of today, and young people, especially, students, just graduating college or just, trying to find a job and all those things today. It's really tough right now, and money is really messed up, and, you can't borrow money, you can't earn money, and it's just really hard right now. It's a lot easier, I think, when we were kids to get a job. It's hard, but it seems easier now in ways. So, I think all of that, it's good training for what's happening right now, which is you got to be able to hustle right now if you're going to get through this thing.
Yeah, and the other thing is you can't give up hope, because a lot of kids are inundated with a hopelessness because they truly don't believe, they can't see how they can even have as good a life as their parents had. And that's huge, because it does weigh on you. You say to yourself, okay, so I'm going to work my way into getting into a really, really good college. And then they go, but then on the other hand, the day I graduate, I'm $130,000, $150,000 in debt. And jobs are very hard to come by. and this was deliberate. This situation was deliberate. I mean, I hesitate sometimes to talk politics, but you can't deny that conservatives ruin the world's economy in less than a generation. In a dozen years, they ruined the entire world's economy, and they did it with impunity. Nobody's been brought to task for that. And look what it's done. It's killed the vitality of a country, and it's actually killed the vitality of the world. And I feel bad for kids, who are, college age kids these days.
They've got a tough road to hoe, as they say.
What do they talk about? I mean, when you talk to your students, what kind of, and specifically, when you talk to your black film students, what kind of attitudes and expectations do they have for the life ahead?
Well, I think that, I try to encourage all my students, and, I don't get a lot of black students, but when I do get a black film student, I especially try to, make them come to terms with the realism of all of this and the reality of all this, and, I tell all my students, to come to school with an agenda, to come to school with an agenda, things that you want to accomplish while you're here, to get, everything you can out of your time here, to get every penny out of what you're paying for your time here. And I think that's a big one, because people kind of come and know, and they're kind of lost, and they're trying to figure things out, and you kind of end up wasting time that way. So that's part of growing up, and that's part of the development, and that's kind of part of the course, unfortunately. But within the context of today, these difficulties you're talking about, it does put more pressure on the situation. And what I tell my black students is that you've got to come out of here with some real skills. You need to figure out what it is you're interested in, and try to get as good as you can at it while you're here. And so that when you leave here, whether you're going to go to grad school or you're going to try to get into the film industry in some kind of way, that you've got a real blue collar ability to do something. And most people that in our area that work in film all the time are people that have a real skill. And so it's a combination of part of what I think is great about our film school is that it's a combination of studies, which is history and criticism and all the things that make you understand film the way a scholar should understand film. And at the same time, you need to be a filmmaker as well. And and it doesn't mean you need to be a director or a producer, but it needs to be, you need to have some skill in filmmaking that enables you to either teach it or to work within the industry of it. And
sure.
So that's I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. It's not anything, no nuclear secret here, but it's amazing how many young people don't quite understand that. I think film is like literature or any other art. It can get kind of lofty, and you can kind of get lost in the appreciation of it, and not understand that if you're going to work within it, that you better know how to do something.
Right. And the other part, well, there's two things that I've kind of gleaned out of this. One is that, yes, it's unfortunate that you don't have, what, like when you and I went to school, there was some lollygagging time available. But nowadays, you have to be prepared to hit the ground running. And that means, do your due diligence, get your skills, and certainly, don't have the arrogant attitude. And I see this with local filmmakers here in Chicago. The arrogant attitude that because you want to do it your way, that's the only way that it can get done. Because more often than not, if you don't know how to do the business of doing business, you're not going to get any business done. So that, I mean, that's a very fast but, kind of harsh and cruel lesson to have to learn right away. But we're not afforded the luxury anymore of maybe taking a year off and having a sabbatical and maybe going out to Hollywood and working as an intern, blah blah blah. Because there are some 50, 60,000 interns and production assistants out in Hollywood right now can't get enough work to pay their bills. So it sounds like your class would be very interesting to just to see how someone who's actually done it, teaches it. And the other thing I want to ask is, are you well appreciated by your students? Do they understand, what your credentials are? And is it something, do you get the respect that I believe you should be due? Hello? Kevin, are you still there? Well, it looks like we've lost Kevin. And what I can tell you now, and fill in, hopefully he can get back, is there will be another showing Monday, August 27th, of his film that he wrote and directed, Destination Planet Negro, and that's going to be at the Gene Siskel Film Center here in Chicago. He said, I believe he said that at least Friday the film time is 8 p.m. and I would guess it's probably about the same on Monday. If you would like to take a look at some stills and the information about it, just go to www.planetnegro.com, and you can search around on the internet for more of Kevin Wilmott's.
Oh,
are you there?
Yeah, I just got cut off, but I'm back now.
Oh, good. I was running down all of your credentials and things like that. Probably the NSA is upset about something and probably cut you off. Well, they're probably upset with me. I actually, if I get to see you tomorrow, and I fully hope that I do, if you have 5 minutes, I have a great story to tell you about my last brush with the intelligence apparatus, and it has to do with writing the book, the first one of the trilogy. So anyway, I was telling people that there's a re-showing of Destination Negro Monday at the Siskel Film Center, Gene Siskel Film Center. And is that also at 8 o'clock?
I believe it starts at 8:30, but I would get there at 8 or earlier if you could.
Yeah, and you said that you don't have distribution yet, but you're looking for it?
Yeah, this is really our world premiere in many ways. We've done some test screenings and stuff, but that have been really, really great. But this is our first screening to the general public. So,
sure.
So this is going to be a fun night for us.
Well, I personally can't wait. And is there anything else you'd like to talk about? Any other projects that you have coming up? Because we're coming down to about the last few minutes of the show.
Well, we actually have another film we just finished, and another film I've been working on a long time. This one came together quickly. It wasn't one of my year-long kind of ordeals that I go through, but this is a film called Jayhawkers, which is about Will Chamberlain when he played at Kansas University. And Lawrence, was segregated when he was here, and right. he had a big influence on opening things up here, and it's a kind of a really cool basketball film in the sense that it ends with what's considered the greatest NCAA basketball championship games of all time, is triple overtime game against North Carolina. And you know how it ends up. We shouldn't tell our viewers how it ends up.
No. It's like a Passion of the Christ. I'm not going to tell anybody how it ends. Or Titanic. I want to ruin the ending for anybody on Titanic.
Don't ruin the ending. But there's a generation of folks out there that don't know how Titanic ends. So it's as obvious as joke is to me and you. I hate to say it, but I'm sure there were some people that didn't know how Titanic ended. But yes, it's a really cool film, and we will be getting that out there, the year coming up here. So we hope to get around to the country with Destination, and then get Jayhawkers out, and then this summer, the summer coming up, 2014 summer, we plan to shoot Emmett Till. So
where are you gonna shoot it?
Well, we're going to shoot it, mainly around Kansas, and then some in Mississippi, and probably a little bit in Chicago. It's working with Keith Beauchamp, who did the documentary, the untold story of Emmett Till, So it's been a project we've been working on a long time, and I think it's finally coming together. And it's as we've been talking about, it's pretty amazing to that a movie about him has never been made, and a feature film, and it just lets you know that so many of the things that are most important to us about American culture to go unspoken, and it's just high time. I mean, you hear about Emmett Till all the time now. Certainly, during the Trey Barton trial and everything, he was mentioned a lot. And even before then, the whole thing about the rapper,
oh, that's right. Yeah, that's controversy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and him talking, making fun of Emmett, and it's just let you know how important it is to not forget about where we've come from and where we're still trying to go, and so we're hoping that Emmett will be another story that will get us a little further down the road.
Sure. Well, I want to thank you for spending this time with me. I know it was unexpected, and of course, because of where you're going to be, because of where you are right now, we couldn't do the show while you're obviously at the world premiere. But
sure.
Thank you for sharing this time with me, and it's been a delight meeting you. I couldn't have had a better time. I really.
Likewise, William. It's like you said, man. It wasn't like we talked this long, man. And it's great to be interviewed by a great interviewer, man, and whom has something to say, and really look forward to meeting you.
Well, thank you, and I plan on getting down there tomorrow night. Like I said, if use enough baby oil, I can get this sheriff's bracelet off my ankle, and come on down. So you just see the movie and get back before they do a bed check.
There you go. There you go. Very good, sir. Very good. Well, hey, you come and holler at me when you see me.
Yeah, I will. I don't want to. Please, I don't want to take up your time or anything. I just want to introduce myself, and then maybe at some future time, for damn sure, when you come up to Chicago to film for the movie, if this is going to be late in the summer, I don't want you to be bumping into you at any of my locations for the bank heist movie. But I would very much love to have the opportunity to make you spend a little time on the set and watch how you work, because obviously there's so much I can learn. So thank you very much for your time. I'm going to skip the closing, the normal closing. Remind people that this has been a pre-recorded edition of the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the Black Science Fiction Society.com website. We've been talking with director and writer Kevin Wilmott, and he, right now, as we're speaking, is probably giving. Are you doing a Q&A tomorrow and
yes,
maybe Monday?
Yeah, I can't be there, unfortunately, on Monday, but I think
somebody else will be doing.
I'll let my actors will be there. Yeah, so yeah, but we'll be doing a Q&A tomorrow night, and it'll be a lot of fun.
All right, so I want to remind people that we can check out the movie on Monday. If you are listening to the show semi-live on Friday, and then I want to remind everybody that this is a week show. It's scheduled to start normally at 9 p.m. Eastern Time every Friday night. We try to have a notable black creative for me to interview, or whoever is hosting. This is not my exclusive gig. And be sure to check out the podcast for previous shows and let your friends know. All of the shows are available online. And I want to thank you again. Thank you very much, Kevin, and much success ahead for you, and I look forward to meeting you.
Yeah, you too, William. Take care, my friend.
All right. Thank you very much, and good night, everybody. 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 And good night.